At 3:17 in the morning, a trail camera captured a barefoot woman standing at a child's grave in the freezing cold. She wasn't shivering. She wasn't leaving footprints in the fresh snow. And when she turned toward the lens, she smiled. That's just one of the 4 encounters you're about to hear. A groundskeeper watched his coworker disappear, only to find a headstone with his name and tomorrow's date carved into it. A family's security camera filmed a man walking into their house, but never walking out. And one cemetery worker? He's still receiving notes about a funeral service that hasn't happened yet. A service with his name on it. These aren't campfire stories. These are testimonies. And by the end of this video, you might start checking your own locks a little more carefully. I want to tell you something I've never been able to explain. And believe me, I've tried. For over a year now, I've turned this thing over in my mind like a stone I can't stop touching. Looking for cracks. Looking for logic. Looking for anything that makes sense. I haven't found it yet. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I spent nearly 4 years working as a groundskeeper at a historic cemetery in Philadelphia. I started in the autumn I turned 24, back when I thought cemeteries were just quiet places where grass needed cutting and headstones needed straightening. I was wrong. Most of my days blurred together. Sharpening mower blades in a cracked brick shed. Riding out to fix slanted headstones that frost heave pushed crooked every winter. Sweeping goose droppings from the Victorian walkways before grieving families arrived to say goodbye to someone they loved. It was repetitive work. Peaceful even. The kind of job where your body takes over and your mind drifts somewhere else entirely. By late October 2023, I could have done the routine half asleep. And honestly, during those cold dawn shifts when the mist hung low between the monuments, sometimes I practically did. That's what makes everything that happened feel so impossible. Like my own muscle memory opened a door it had no business touching. It started on a Wednesday, October 25th. I showed up at 6:30 in the morning, still rubbing sleep from my eyes, and sat down at the single desktop computer in the caretaker's cottage to check the day's schedule. The calendar had one new entry. Thursday, October 26th, 2 p.m. Section M, private family service. 8 folding chairs. No funeral home notation. No family phone number. No contact name. Now that kind of omission isn't unheard of. Sometimes a relative handles arrangements directly, and the paperwork comes through incomplete. It happens. So I printed the line, taped it to the corkboard beside the coffee maker, and didn't give it another thought. I wish I had. Thursday morning arrived cold enough to silver the grass with frost. Around noon, I drove the utility cart up the slope toward Section M. That's the oldest terrace on the grounds, where crumbling obelisks lean against one another like exhausted old men, and black iron fences cage family plots that haven't seen visitors in decades. When I crested the hill, I stopped the cart and stared. A rectangle of earth yawned open exactly where the calendar said it would be. Neat. Square. Professional. The excavated soil sat in a tidy pile on a sheet of plywood beside the hole. Someone had already dug the grave. I assumed our backhoe operator, a no-nonsense guy I'll call Richie, had scooped it out the evening before. That's how it usually worked. We'd get the notice, Richie would dig, and I'd set up the chairs and carpet before the family arrived. So that's what I did. I arranged 8 white plastic chairs in 2 neat rows, rolled out the green indoor-outdoor carpet that hides the raw dirt from mourners' eyes, lowered the aluminum casket frame into position, added a bouquet stand and a weather-beaten podium we kept behind the tool shed. Then I stepped back and waited. 2 p.m. came. Nobody showed. 2:15. 2:30. Nothing but swirling leaves and the distant hiss of traffic from the parkway below. A train cried out somewhere across the river, a thin, lonely sound that faded before I could place it. I started to get that prickling feeling at the back of my neck. The one that tells you something's off before your brain catches up. I called my manager, Kathy. Her voice sounded more puzzled than worried when she answered. She checked her spreadsheet, then checked it again. There's no service logged, she said slowly. Nothing for Thursday. Nothing in Section M. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? It was right there on the calendar this morning. I'm looking at the same calendar, and there's nothing. She promised to call every funeral home within 50 miles and get back to me. By 3 p.m., I convinced myself that grief just runs on its own clock. Families arrive late sometimes. Plans change. Maybe they'd gotten lost or delayed. So I left the setup untouched and rattled back down to the cottage for a lukewarm cup of coffee. Kathy called near sunset. Every funeral director she'd contacted denied having a Thursday booking at our cemetery. Every single one. Then she asked a question that made my blood go cold. Who told Richie to dig the grave? I blinked. I assumed you did. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then she laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the nervous kind. The kind people make when they're trying to convince themselves something isn't as strange as it seems. I didn't order anything, she said quietly. Break it down in the morning. Someone's paperwork must have gotten crossed somewhere. I agreed and hung up. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. If she didn't order the grave, and I didn't order the grave, and no funeral home ordered the grave, then who did? And more importantly, who is it for? If you're already feeling that chill creeping up your spine, go ahead and hit subscribe. Because what I found the next morning, I still can't explain it, and I'm not sure I ever will. Friday dawned gray and damp, the kind of morning that makes everything feel muffled and distant. I drove up the hill with Dan, a wiry summer hire who always had one earbud in, even when nothing was playing. He was quiet most of the time, but I liked working with him. He showed up on time and didn't complain. We crested the bend toward Section M. Dan slammed the brakes so hard that the rake beside me clattered off the seat and hit the floorboard. What the? I started. Then I saw it too. Someone was sitting in the front left chair. The figure sat perfectly still, body rigid, head bowed slightly toward the open grave like someone deep in prayer or deep in grief. But something was wrong. The figure was all shadow. Even with the morning light filtering through the oak branches, I couldn't make out any features. Just the outline of a long coat with a hood pulled low. The darkness beneath that had seemed too deep, too complete, like the seat had swallowed every detail and left only the shape of a person behind. I climbed down from the cart first. My legs felt unsteady, but I made myself walk forward. Excuse me, I called out. The grounds are closed right now. We're not open until... I stopped. 10 steps away, the chair was empty. No coat, no figure, nothing but a delicate lattice of mourning due on spotless white plastic. I turned around. Dan was still frozen behind the steering wheel, his face drained of color. Did you see? I started. Yeah. His voice cracked. Yeah, I saw. We forced a nervous laugh between us. The kind of laugh that doesn't mean anything is funny. It just means you need to make a sound to prove the world is still normal. Then we started folding chairs. I tried to focus on the work. Grip the chair back. Fold the legs. Stack it in the cart. Simple, mechanical movements to keep my hands busy while my mind raced in circles. When I bent down to lift the indoor-outdoor carpet, I glanced automatically into the grave, and then I yanked my head back so fast the world blurred. The hole was gone. No, not gone. The rectangle was still there. The shape of the grave remained exactly where it had been the day before, but the soil was flush with the ground. Smooth. Packed. Hard. It looked the way graves look after a decade of settling. After years of rain and frost have compressed the earth back into place. After the land has forgotten it was ever disturbed at all. Not one night. Not one night. I couldn't breathe. Dan crouched beside me and pressed his knuckles into the dirt. His hand trembled. The ground resisted like packed clay, like it had been there for years. He looked up at me, and I saw genuine terror in his eyes. What the hell is going on? He whispered. I didn't have an answer. We loaded everything into the cart in silence. Neither of us wanted to talk about what we'd seen, because talking about it would mean admitting it was real. Back at the cottage, I went straight to the corkboard beside the coffee maker. The printed line was gone. Not crossed out. Not crumpled up in the trash. Gone. The pushpin was still there. But the paper had vanished. I turned to the computer and pulled up the calendar. Thursday's slot was completely blank. I clicked into the revision history, the log that tracks every change made to the document. No deletion recorded. No edit. No trace that anything had ever been there at all. I called Kathy. She swore she hadn't touched the file. When I told her the grave had somehow filled itself overnight, she actually sounded relieved. Well, she said with a weak laugh, at least we won't have to pay Richie for backfilling. But Dan didn't laugh. He asked for the rest of the morning off, and Kathy said fine, and he walked out without meeting my eyes. I need you to understand something. Dan wasn't the type to scare easily. He was tough, practical, the kind of guy who made fun of ghost stories. But whatever we saw that morning changed something in him. And what happened that evening changed everything. Around 5:30, Dan offered to take my usual gate-closing patrol. Said he wanted to make up for leaving early. I didn't think anything of it. The sun was setting, painting the sky that dull pink of watered-down wine, and I was tired. I thanked him and watched him drive the electric cart past the cottage and up the serpentine road towards Section M. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, and wind roared through the speaker, so loud I could barely hear anything else. Just static and gusts, and, somewhere underneath it all, what might have been a voice trying to break through. One syllable. Maybe two. Front. Then the call dropped. I dialed back immediately. Straight to voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. My heart was pounding now. I grabbed the keys to the old Ford pickup and floored it up the hill, gravel spraying behind me as I took the curves too fast. The headlights swept across stone and grass until they caught the cart. It sat idling in the middle of the path, exactly where we'd loaded chairs that morning. Empty. I killed the engine and got out, calling Dan's name. The sound echoed off the mausoleum walls and faded into nothing. The grave site looked ancient, undisturbed, like no one had touched it in 100 years. But Dan was nowhere. I shouted again and again, turning in circles, my flashlight beam slicing through the darkness. And then I saw it. Off to my right, just at the edge of where my headlights reached, stood a headstone that hadn't been there 24 hours earlier. The base was still flower white with unset mortar, fresh granite, new engraving. I walked toward it. I don't know why. I think disbelief does that to you. It pulls you toward the thing you're most afraid of, because some part of your brain refuses to accept what your eyes are seeing. The inscription read, Daniel Ortiz, June 9th, 1999 to October 27th, 2023. Forever loved. Never alone. October 27th. That was today. I called 911 with shaking hands. Within 5 minutes, a cruiser from the local district pulled up. Officers swept Section M with flashlights, checked every vaulted cellar door, searched behind every monument. They found Dan's tire tracks cutting toward the cemetery's rear exit. The tracks disappeared onto the main avenue, like he'd just driven off into the night. But Dan's cart was still here. Engine running. Keys in the ignition. Kathy arrived 20 minutes later, her face bone white. She kept saying she'd just talked to Dan on his cell. He'd called to say he had a killer migraine and was heading home. But when detectives pulled Dan's phone records, there was no outgoing call at that time. His device had pinged its last signal from somewhere near Section M. Then it powered off. Permanently. They pulled security footage from the one camera we had, a grainy unit mounted above the pump house at the bottom of the hill. It showed Dan's cart cresting the slope at 6:12 p.m. Less than 60 seconds later, the cart rolled back into frame. Driverless. No figure getting on or off. The cart just coasted downhill until it bumped a curb and stopped. 1 minute. That's all it took. 1 minute for Dan to vanish without a trace. The investigation turned up details that made my skin crawl. Richie, the backhoe operator, admitted he'd never actually spoken to me about digging that grave. He'd found a backdated work order in a manila folder on his desk and assumed Kathy had slipped it there overnight. That folder disappeared the same evening Dan did. The granite for Dan's headstone was traced to a Vermont quarry that had shipped us a bulk order back in September. Every slab in that shipment had been accounted for, except one. According to the forklift manifest, that particular stone hadn't left our maintenance barn until Friday afternoon. The same afternoon Dan and I were across the grounds, folding chairs. Weeks passed. Flyers with Dan's face appeared on telephone poles along the avenue. His photo smiled out from the evening news. His mother held a candlelight vigil and spoke to reporters about the evil that lurks behind carved angels. Police labeled him a missing person. No foul play determined. Case open but cold. I kept replaying that phone call in my head. The wind. The static. That one fractured syllable. Front. Was he trying to say he was at the front of the cemetery? The front row of chairs? The front gate? Or was it something else entirely? A word shouted by a voice that was already being pulled somewhere no living person should go. I burned through my accrued vacation. Filed my resignation in the second week of December. Kathy hugged me goodbye. Said she understood. Said she didn't blame me one bit. I signed a lease in a quiet suburb outside Harrisburg, a place where nobody carves cherubs into marble and the dead stay where they belong. But it followed me. December 21st. The winter solstice. The longest night of the year. I was sitting in my apartment at 4 a.m., unable to sleep, when I made a stupid decision. I logged onto the cemetery's scheduling server from my laptop. Just to look. Just to remind myself that the old routines were still there, still normal, still untouched by whatever I'd witnessed. The calendar opened by default to future bookings. And there it was. Thursday, January 4th, 11 a.m. Section M, Private Family Service. 8 chairs. Under the field marked requested by, in crisp black font, Michael D. Hart. My name. I deleted the entry. Unplugged my laptop. Sat in the blue-gray dawn light and tried to convince myself it was a glitch. A prank. A hallucination brought on by stress and sleeplessness. But the notes kept coming. I use a paper planner now. No digital calendars. No shared servers. Nothing connected to anything. And yet, every few weeks, a sticky note appears on my refrigerator door. Always the same blocky handwriting I don't recognize. Chairs. Flowers. Open grave. The dates change, but they always fall on a Thursday. I live alone. My building superintendent swears he doesn't enter without notice. The locks are new. The windows don't open from outside. I peel off each note and drop it in the trash. Then I open my planner and draw a thick black line through that Thursday. Because whether I believe in what's happening or not, I am not spending another day anywhere near a cemetery. When sleep finally takes me, the dream is always the same. I walk up the hill in bright noon light toward 8 white chairs arranged beside a hole that neither fills nor deepens. A hole that just exists. Patient. Waiting. A hooded figure sits in the front row, as still as the limestone saints perched on distant crypts. I try to stop walking, but my legs keep moving. Each step feels heavier than the last, like gravity is rewriting the rules just for me. I get closer. Close enough to almost see beneath the hood. And then my boot lands on ground that wasn't there a heartbeat ago. Solid. Packed. Ancient. The grave has closed itself around me. I wake up with the floor lamp buzzing softly and a sticky note fluttering against the refrigerator grill as the heater kicks on. Sometimes I manage to laugh about it in daylight. The mind plays nasty tricks after years spent among the dead, right? That's what I tell myself. But other times, I'll catch a news segment about a missing person and I'll wonder, is there a headstone somewhere with their name already carved into it? Is there an invisible caretaker printing schedules that none of the living remember entering? Digging graves that fill themselves when we're not looking? Arranging chairs for mourners who never quite arrive? If there's a service waiting for me, I hope whoever organizes it has the decency not to send me an invitation. But on the chance that I'm expected anyway, I pray they bring enough chairs. No one should have to stand through their own farewell. Even if the only witness is a shadow sitting silent in the front row. That story still haunts me. But the next one, it involves footage that police have watched dozens of times and still can't explain. If you want to see what happens when you disrespect the dead, keep watching. I'm going to tell you about a mistake I made. A stupid, careless, irreversible mistake that I will regret for the rest of my life. And I'm going to tell you about my friend who paid for it. Last September, I was a second-year student at a university in Georgia. Shared a cramped dorm room with my best friend since high school. I'll call him Derek. We were broke, bored, and desperate for attention. We ran a tiny YouTube channel together. Nothing fancy. Cafeteria taste tests. Dorm room pranks. Tech hacks for students on a budget. The kind of content that disappears into the algorithm without making a ripple. Our subscriber count hovered just under 1,000, and we couldn't figure out how to break through. Derek was convinced we needed something bold. Something that would ride the Halloween algorithm wave and actually get us noticed. So on Saturday, September 14th, 2024, he came bursting into our room waving a tourist brochure for an old cemetery just across the river from campus. 10-minute walk from our dorm. Real graves. Real history. Ghost vlog, he said, eyes bright with that manic energy he got when he thought he had a good idea. We go in at dusk, film some spooky stuff, drop a few jump scares. Easy content. Guaranteed views. I remember hesitating. Cemeteries had always felt private to me. Sacred almost. Places where people came to grieve and remember. Not places for stupid college kids with cameras to chase clout. But Derek was already packing the tripod, and I was tired of watching our view count flatline. So I grabbed the camera and followed him out the door. We reached the cemetery just as the caretaker was about to lock the gate. We sweet-talked our way in with promises that we'd be quick and respectful. Respectful. God, that word haunts me now. The sun was setting. A pale half-moon hung over marble obelisks while cicadas rasped like static in the ancient trees. We crossed the grass toward the oldest section, a ridge where massive oaks swallowed the noise of traffic and left only the soft crunch of our sneakers on dirt paths. Derek was in performance mode, narrating for the camera, making jokes, hamming it up. He slapped his palm against a crumbling headstone dated 1864. "Hey buddy," he grinned into the lens. "Smash that like button, would you?" I remember wincing behind the camera, but I kept filming. We pushed deeper into the grounds. That's when we found her grave. A granite table marker with fresh silk lilies set in a green plastic cone. The name on the stone read Ella Pritchard, 1891 to 1918. The flowers were blocking our shot, so Derek picked up the entire bouquet and tossed it carelessly onto the grass. Then, and I wish I'd stopped him, he climbed up onto the stone itself, crossed his legs like he was meditating, pressed his palms together in mock prayer. "Miss Ella," he said to the camera, grinning, "your channel needs a collab." I told him to chill out. But the golden sunset light was spilling through the oak leaves in this beautiful cinematic way, and I was already thinking about thumbnails and view counts. So I framed the shot and kept rolling. "Please, if you ever find yourself in a cemetery, don't do what we did. Don't touch the flowers. Don't climb on the stones. Don't mock the names of people whose stories you don't know. Because some of them are still listening." The video went live on Monday at noon. By dinner time, it had 20,000 views, more than everything else we'd ever posted combined. The comments section was blowing up. Most people were joking that we'd poked the ghost bear and couldn't wait to see what happened next. Derek was thriving, refreshing the view count every few minutes, already planning our next cemetery adventure. I felt relief more than excitement, like we'd finally cracked the code. I had no idea the code was going to crack us back. Wednesday morning, I got back from an 8 a.m. lecture to find Derek still asleep. And on top of my closed laptop, a crumpled square of instant film. A Polaroid. I picked it up and felt my stomach drop. It showed Derek and me standing in front of Ella's headstone. Late afternoon light. Long shadows stretching at our feet. I had not taken this photo. We hadn't brought a Polaroid camera. No one else had been there with us. I woke Derek and asked where it came from. He blinked at it for a long moment, confused, then swore he'd never seen it before. We searched through Saturday's memory card. Nothing but our DSLR footage. No Polaroid images. No explanation. I shoved the photo into my desk drawer and tried to convince myself that one of our classmates was playing an elaborate prank. That night, I left the room for exactly 60 seconds to grab a snack from the vending machine down the hall. When I came back, the Polaroid was sitting on my keyboard, warm to the touch, like someone had just been holding it. Derek was still at the library. The door was locked. No scratches. No signs of forced entry. Nobody should have been able to get in. But someone or something had. Drop a comment and tell me, what would you have done? Because honestly, I was terrified. And what happened during our next live stream made everything worse. Thursday evening, we hosted a Q&A for our growing audience, a live video where subscribers could ask questions in real time. About 30 minutes in, the chat exploded. One account, one name, flooding the feed. L_turns. Over and over the same word. Listen, 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 listen. I panicked and killed the stream. Then I replayed the last few minutes of footage. Underneath our voices, barely audible, I heard something I hadn't noticed during the broadcast. A soft shuffle, like fabric brushing against grass, followed by 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Knock, 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 against wood, like someone was standing just outside our door. Derek laughed it off. Called it lag. Audio glitches. I wanted to believe him. But that night, I set up a microphone near the window and hit record before we went to sleep. In the morning I listened back. Mostly wind. The occasional rustle of trees outside. But at 2:11 a.m., clear as anything. A soft, slow sigh. Right next to the microphone. Like someone standing at the foot of my bed, breathing while I slept. Friday was game day. A huge football matchup that had the whole campus buzzing with tailgates and school spirit. Derek left early with friends. I stayed behind to finish a paper. By evening, I texted him asking if he wanted to grab tacos. No response. Midnight came and went. Then 1 a.m. I started to worry. Around 1:30, I heard the suite door click open. Finally, I called out. "Where the hell have you?" No one answered. I walked out into the common area. Empty. But Derek's bedroom door was open, his desk lamp glowing. And on his bed, the silk lily arrangement. The same flowers we'd moved at Ella's grave. Wilted now, petals brown and curling, dusted with pale cemetery clay. Derek's phone lay beside them, screen shattered, SIM card missing. His wallet and keys sat untouched on the dresser. But Derek was gone. I called 911 with shaking hands. Campus police sealed off the room. 9 units tracked Derek's scent to the door, and then lost it completely. No one had seen him return to campus. No one had seen him leave the football stadium. Security cameras showed him entering the tailgate area around 4 p.m. But he never appeared on any footage after that. And here's the detail that made the detectives go quiet. The hallway motion sensors outside our door, they never triggered. Not once. Not all night. So how did those flowers end up on his bed? The search expanded. Flyers went up all over campus. Local news ran a short segment on the missing student. Some people whispered that Derek had staged the whole thing, that it was a publicity stunt to boost our channel. Those comments hurt worse than the fear. Because I knew Derek, and I knew he hadn't staged anything. Whatever took him, it was real. I couldn't stay away. On Thursday night, against every warning screaming in my head, I went back to the cemetery. Alone. After dark. I had to know. I crept along the paths with a flashlight trembling in my hand until I reached the old ridge where we'd filmed that stupid video. Ella's grave was there. But the flowers we'd disturbed, the ones that had ended up on Derek's bed, were gone. And the soil in front of her headstone looked different. Freshly turned. Darker. Looser than the ground around it. Sitting on top of the disturbed earth was another Polaroid. Derek, alone at the grave. Shoulders slumped. His eyes in the photo were wrong, pale, blurred, almost completely white. A branch snapped behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the flashlight. Nothing there. Just darkness twisting between the headstones. But I heard something. Footsteps. Soft. Measured. Getting closer. I ran. I ran until my lungs burned, and the trees gave way to streetlights, and I could see the glow of the dormitory towers ahead of me. When I finally stopped to catch my breath, I swear, I heard those footsteps one last time. Then silence. Like whatever had been following me had decided to let me go. This time, I deleted our cemetery video the next day. But YouTube glitched. The thumbnail stayed up, a gray placeholder marked processing. Comments kept appearing. People said the video still played for them. Only at midnight. Only in full. I don't know if that's true. I shut my laptop and requested a semester withdrawal. But it wasn't over. On December 22nd, a padded envelope arrived at my parents' house. No return address. Local postmark. Inside, a single SD card. I shouldn't have looked. I looked anyway. One file. Night vision footage. It showed me, asleep in my childhood bedroom. The angle was set maybe 2 feet from my pillow. I could hear breathing on the recording. My breathing. Slow and steady. And underneath it, another breath. Slower. Deeper. Coming from somewhere right beside my bed. The smell hit me before I finished watching. Something faint and sweet rising from the SD card itself. Lilies. I snapped the card in half and drove it to the sheriff's office that same afternoon. I've spent months researching since then. Found a newspaper article from 1985 about a college student who went missing after filming in that same cemetery. His roommate found crushed chrysanthemums on his empty bed. Another brief from 2002 mentioned twin art students who disappeared after photographing graves for a class project. Police noted disturbed soil near the Pritchard family plot. Ella Pritchard died in 1918 during the influenza pandemic. According to local history, she visited her fiancé's uncle's grave every single day until the virus took her, always leaving fresh lilies. Her fiancé was a soldier stationed in France. He never came home. He was never buried. Last January, I went back one more time. Not to film. Not to investigate. Just to apologize. I brought white lilies. Set them gently where Derek had thrown the first bouquet. Said I was sorry. Said I understood now. The wind moved through the oak branches overhead. But it didn't answer. Derek is still missing. No bank activity. No phone pings. No DNA matches. His parents keep his room exactly as it was, except for the bedspread they replaced after police returned the mold-crusted lilies. A new envelope arrived last week. I haven't opened it. It sits on my desk as I write this. Light as dried petals. Corners slightly damp. Part of me wants to burn it without looking. Part of me needs to know. If you ever visit an old cemetery, please, I'm begging you, resist the urge to disturb anything. Don't move the flowers. Don't mock the names. Don't treat the dead like content. Some stories stay buried because we leave them alone. Others wait patiently for someone foolish enough to press record. If this story is giving you chills, you're not alone. Hit that like button and stay with me, because this next account involves something captured on a trail camera that made seasoned police detectives go silent. This is something I never thought I'd share publicly. Not because it's too painful, though parts of it absolutely are, but because even after everything, I can't explain what happened. And believe me, I've spent a long time trying. My name is Thomas. I'm 48 years old. I live in central Pennsylvania and work as a mechanical supervisor at a power plant. By every measure, I'm an average guy. Practical, skeptical, not the type to believe in things that can't be explained by science or common sense. I used to have a normal life. A wife, a daughter. My daughter's name was Ellie. She was 9 years old when she died. Car accident, October 2021. She wasn't even in the car. She was walking home from school. 2 blocks from our front door. A driver ran a red light at 60 miles an hour. And just like that, the center of our world was gone. I'm not going to talk about the funeral. I can't. What matters for this story is what came after. We buried Ellie at a small cemetery just outside of town. Quiet place. Rolling green hills. The kind of cemetery that feels peaceful instead of sad. I started visiting every Sunday morning. I'd bring her fresh white lilies. Those were always her favorite. And I'd clear away the leaves and just talk to her. Sounds strange, maybe. But it helped. It became part of my week. As essential as breathing. My wife came with me the first few times. But eventually it got too hard for her. I understood. So I went alone. For over a year, nothing unusual happened. I'd leave the flowers. They'd still be there when I visited the following week. Maybe a little wilted. Maybe knocked sideways by wind or rain. But still there. Then came February 2024. February 11th. The first real snow of that winter. I got to the cemetery early, around 7:45 in the morning. Parked in my usual spot. Walked the familiar path. But when I reached Ellie's grave, something was wrong. The flowers I'd left the week before were gone. Not wilted. Not scattered. Gone. The ceramic vase was still there, sitting upright beside her headstone. Completely empty. I searched the area. Nothing. No broken stems. No stray petals frozen into the snow. It looked like someone had come in the middle of the week and deliberately removed them. I asked the groundskeeper, a quiet older man who'd worked there for nearly 20 years. He swore he hadn't touched anything. Said he didn't clean individual graves unless specifically requested. But then he paused. Looked away. You're not the first person to ask me about this, he admitted. Been a few families lately. Same area. Same story. Did you ever find out who's taking them? He shook his head slowly. Could be animals, I guess. But he didn't believe that. Neither did I. I want you to put yourself in my position. Someone is taking flowers from your child's grave. What do? I'll tell you what I did. I set a trap. The following weekend I left a new bouquet, but this time I placed a small rock beneath the edge of the vase, just to see if anything got moved. I even took a photo of exactly how I'd arranged everything. 1 week later I came back. The rock was still there, but the vase itself was gone. Not just the flowers. The entire ceramic vase had vanished. That was enough. I bought a trail camera. Motion activated. Infrared capable. I hid it inside a small wooden birdhouse and mounted the birdhouse on the tree directly across from Ellie's headstone. Pointed it straight at the grave. Padlocked the housing shut so no one could tamper with it. Then I left the flowers and waited. 1 week later, the flowers were gone again. But the camera was still there. I took it home, connected it to my laptop, and started scrubbing through the footage. Most of it was uneventful. Hours of nothing. Wind moving the branches. A few squirrels. Snow falling in the darkness. Then I reached March 1st. Timestamp, 3:17 a.m. The motion sensor had triggered, and what I saw made me forget how to breathe. A woman walked into the frame. She moved slowly, deliberately, crossing the cemetery in the dead of night. I paused the footage and backed it up. Studied every detail. She looked to be in her 30s. Long black hair. Wearing something thin and white. A hospital gown maybe, or a simple slip dress. No coat. No shoes. It was below freezing that night. There was snow on the ground, and she wasn't shivering. She walked directly to Ellie's grave and stopped. Bent down, picked up the vase of lilies, and then, slowly, deliberately, she turned to face the tree where I'd hidden the camera. And she stared. Not a glance. Not a passing look. She stared directly into the lens for 15 solid seconds. Her expression wasn't angry. Wasn't blank. It was knowing. Like she wanted me to understand that she knew I was watching. That she'd always known. I called the police that same morning. A detective came out, watched the footage, took it seriously, which honestly surprised me. They reviewed the cemetery's own security feeds. Here's what they found. The main gate was locked at 9 p.m. that night. Same as always. No vehicles entered or left between closing time and dawn. And there were no footprints in the snow. Let me say that again. Fresh snow had fallen that evening. Undisturbed and pristine. But somehow, that barefoot woman crossed the entire cemetery, took the flowers from my daughter's grave, and left. Without leaving a single footprint behind. Police checked with nearby hospitals. No patients matching her description were missing. They searched psychiatric facilities, homeless shelters, local databases. Nothing. She didn't exist. I kept the camera up. 1 week later, March 8th, 3:17 a.m., she appeared again. Same woman. Same clothes. Same impossibly slow walk. But this time, she didn't take the flowers. She just stood at the grave, perfectly still, staring into the camera. 4:42 seconds. Then she turned and walked away, dissolving into the darkness between the headstones. I tried to enhance the footage, zoom in on her face, pull out any identifying detail. Every time I tried, the image corrupted, just enough to blur her features, just enough to make identification impossible, like the file itself was protecting her. I stopped leaving flowers after that. I felt like a coward, like I was abandoning my daughter. But I also couldn't shake the feeling that those visits weren't just mine anymore, that someone else had claimed that ground. The last footage I captured was the worst. March 15th, 3:17 a.m. She appeared exactly as before. Walked to the grave. Stood motionless. Stared into the camera. But this time, just before she turned to leave, she smiled. Not a human smile. Nothing warm or kind about it. Just this slow, too wide stretching of her mouth. Like someone who had watched humans smile and was trying to imitate it without understanding what it meant. Then she walked backward, still facing the camera, step by step, never turning around, until the darkness swallowed her completely. That was the last time I went to the cemetery. But she hasn't forgotten me. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night. No sound, no nightmare, just awake. And every single time, without fail, the clock reads 3:17 a.m. I don't have a happy ending for this story. The police said they'd keep investigating. I haven't heard from them in months. I backed up the footage twice, once on a flash drive locked in a safe, once sent to a friend who works in IT. Just in case something happens to me. Just in case she's not done. That story changes people. I can see it in the comments every time we share something like this. If it's affecting you, drop a like. Let me know I'm not telling these stories into the void. Because this last account, it's not over. The person who shared it with us says strange things are still appearing on his security cameras. As recently as last week. I've lived in a lot of different places over the years. Apartments, duplexes, basement rentals, even a converted garage one winter when money was tight. But nothing compares to what happened after my wife and I bought a farmhouse in rural Tennessee in the fall of 2022. I still own that house. I will never set foot in it again. My wife Rachel and I were desperate to get out of the city. We wanted space, quiet, fresh air, somewhere we could grow vegetables and maybe raise a few chickens. When we found this listing, an old farmhouse on a quiet stretch of highway, sitting on about 12 acres, it seemed too good to be true. The price was suspiciously low, but the bones were solid, nothing falling apart. The listing mentioned a historic family cemetery on the back portion of the property. 12 headstones, all from the 1800s. Honestly, that made the place feel more appealing, not less. Like we were buying into a piece of local history. We figured we'd leave it alone. Let the past stay buried. For the first few weeks, everything was perfect. I fixed up the house. Rachel started her fall garden. We spent cool evenings on the wraparound porch with mugs of coffee, listening to the wind move through the fields. It was peaceful. The cemetery was barely visible through the trees at the back of the property. Easy to forget was even there. But then Rachel noticed something. Late October. We were having breakfast when she mentioned seeing muddy boot prints on the front porch. I went out to look. Sure enough. One set of tracks. Heavy. Deep. The kind of impressions a large man might leave. They started near the edge of the yard, crossed the porch, and stopped directly in front of the front door. No exit prints. Just someone walking toward our house. And then nothing. We didn't have close neighbors. Nobody who might wander over in the night. I told myself it was probably a utility worker. Maybe a hunter who got turned around in the dark. But that didn't explain the missing return tracks. The next time it rained heavily, the prints came back. Same pattern. Approaching from the back of the property this time. Always at night. Never any sign of anything stolen or disturbed. Just those heavy, deliberate footprints. Coming toward us. And then vanishing. November 5th, 2:45 in the morning. Rachel shook me awake. She'd gotten up for a glass of water. Looked out the kitchen window, the one that faced the backyard, and, beyond it, the old cemetery. "There's someone out there," she whispered. Standing in the graveyard. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. The air was bitter cold. Frost made the grass crunch under my boots. I walked all the way to the back fence. Swept the flashlight beam across every headstone. Nothing. Empty. Silent. Still. We installed cameras the next day. 3 of them. Motion activated. Infrared. One on the back porch, one on the front, and one mounted on a post facing the cemetery. We weren't messing around anymore. For several nights, the cameras caught nothing unusual. And then, November 10th, 3:03 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the cemetery camera. I pulled up the footage. The clip started with the tree line moving slightly. Just wind, probably. Then, stepping out from the far left edge of the frame, a figure. A man. Tall. Thin. Wearing dark pants and a jacket. He walked slowly, deliberately, into the cemetery. Didn't look toward the house. Didn't pause or hesitate. Just walked straight to one of the headstones and stopped. And then, he stood there. I fast-forwarded the footage. 5 minutes. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still standing. 15 minutes. Perfectly motionless. At 3:41 a.m., the camera timed out due to inactivity and stopped recording. The next clip started at 5:12 a.m. Empty frame. He never walked out. I showed Rachel. We called the sheriff's office. A deputy came out. Watched the footage. Walked the property. No signs of disturbance. No footprints. No indication anyone had been there. But when we checked the cemetery the next morning, one headstone had a small patch of disturbed soil at its base. Not a hole. More like claw marks. Like someone had scraped at the ground with their bare hands. The name on that stone, Samuel J. Whitmore. Died 1892. Age 37. I did some digging at the County Historical Society. Found a scan of an old handwritten death record. Cause of death, unknown. The only note said he was found near the field. No wounds. Eyes open. That's it. No explanation. No follow-up. Just a man who died with his eyes open, and nobody could say why. We started sleeping with the porch lights on. I kept a baseball bat beside the bed. Rachel refused to go near the back windows after sunset. But the cameras kept recording. November 18th. The footage that broke us. Same man. Same dark clothes. Same impossibly slow movement. 2:58 a.m. He emerged from the trees exactly as before. Walked into the cemetery. But this time, he didn't stop at a headstone. He kept walking. Toward the house. The footage showed him reaching the fence at the edge of our property. Then he moved out of frame, heading left. The next camera, the one on the back porch, picked him up. He stepped onto the porch. Slowly. Deliberately. He stopped at the back door. And then he turned and looked directly into the camera. It was the first time we saw his face clearly. I don't know how to describe it. Pale. Paper white. Eyes wide open but completely empty. No expression at all. Like a mannequin left out in the rain. Like something wearing a human face without understanding how faces work. He stood there for 3 seconds. Then he walked to the right, toward the side of the house. Out of the camera's view. We checked the third camera immediately. The one covering the side of the house. The only exit point from that angle. He never appeared. We watched the footage over and over. He walked in. He never walked out. No doors opened. No windows broke. No footsteps in the house. He just vanished. We left 2 days later, packed what we could fit in the car, and drove to a hotel 3 towns away. We've never spent another night in that house. It still belongs to us, technically. Still sitting empty on that quiet stretch of highway. Every few weeks, I log in remotely to check the camera feeds. Force of habit. Morbid curiosity. I don't know. For months, there was nothing. Then last week, 3:04 a.m., the cemetery camera triggered. But instead of footage, all I got was static. 12 minutes of distortion and white noise. When the feed finally cleared, one of the headstones had moved. The one for Samuel J. Whitmore. It was tilted slightly forward, like something beneath it was pushing up. I haven't told Rachel. I'm not sure I will. Some nights I wake up at 3 a.m. and lie perfectly still listening, waiting for footsteps on the porch, waiting for the creak of a door we forgot to lock, waiting for whatever walked into our house that night to finally finish what it started. That's where this story ends. For now. For cemeteries. For people whose lives were changed forever. A grave that fills itself in a single night, and a co-worker who disappears without a trace. A college student who vanished after disturbing flowers on an old grave. A father whose trail camera captured something impossible standing at his daughter's headstone. And a family who fled their home after watching a figure walk in and never walk out. These stories have one thing in common. The dead don't always stay quiet. And sometimes, when we cross lines we shouldn't cross, disturb things we shouldn't disturb, something crosses back. If any part of this video made you stop and think, hit that like button. If you've ever had an experience you can't explain, something strange in a cemetery, something unexplainable in an old house, leave a comment below. I read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because we're just getting started. One last thing. Wherever you are right now, whatever time it shows on your clock, maybe take a moment to appreciate the quiet. Because some people, like the ones in these stories, would give anything to feel safe in the dark again. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. And remember, some doors once opened never quite close again.